We now move on to the 10-minute rule motion, Youth Mobility Scheme. James McClary.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require the Secretary of State to enter into negotiations with countries which are members of the European Union for the purpose of extending the Youth Mobility Scheme to applicants from those countries on a reciprocal basis and for connected purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, the immense damage caused by the Conservatives' botched Brexit deal is clear for all to see. Few thought that young people would be able to go for 2 years to live and work all the way over in Japan, but not be able to hop across the Channel and do the same in France. I'm not sure anyone voted for that kind of increased bureaucracy back in 2016. This bill gives us the chance to send a different message to a generation of young people who have been denied the opportunities that so many of us in this chamber took for granted growing up. If we wanted to take a job or go and study in an EU country, then we could just go and do it. Opportunity and hope for the future have rarely been in such short supply in this country. This is how we can provide some of both. What I am proposing here is a pragmatic, defined scheme that will once again allow young people across the UK to be able to spend time with our nearest neighbours without having to navigate a tangle of Brexit red tape. A youth mobility scheme with the EU that would open up opportunities for British young people to learn new skills, languages and cultures and bring all of that back with them to benefit our economy and our society.
Will you give way?
This would not... Yes. Oh.
There was a 10-minute, as you know, speaking limit. Please. No.
Okay, sorry. Okay. This would not be the UK's only reciprocal youth mobility scheme. We have such arrangements in place already with Australia, Japan, New Zealand and Canada. It's familiar, tried and tested, allowing those aged 18 to 30 to live, work and study for a set period. The government has made much of its so-called missions. Mission number 1, we're told, economic growth. Yet any proposal that might involve our European neighbours and contribute to boosting growth is dismissed. Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK is facing acute labour shortages, particularly in key sectors like hospitality. These are exactly the kinds of jobs that young people visiting the UK for a few years might take on, whether while studying, immersing themselves in our culture or improving their grasp of our language. It suggests that this is a government that is not serious about making the practical, hard-headed choices that would greatly benefit the UK economy and labour market in the long term, stimulating growth and improving the lives of British people. The government also talks up its reset with the EU. This, so far at least, seems to involve little more than warm words and a continuation of the previous government's attitude towards closer cooperation with the EU as a threat rather than a considerable opportunity to make Britain more secure and prosperous. Indeed, they have stuck so closely to the Conservative Party's script, or is it Reform UK's script, that ministers have even mischaracterised a youth mobility scheme with the EU as a return to freedom of movement, repeatedly in fact. That is categorically not what is being proposed here. Any scheme would be time-limited and involve a restricted cohort of eligible people. I truly hope the government will seriously reconsider its short-sighted and self-defeating position on the issue. A number of honourable members from across this House have rightly asked ministers directly for an explanation about their refusal to explore such a scheme. Yet, no one has given them a response that makes any sense at all. Meanwhile, the government has tied itself up in unnecessary red lines on Europe that do nothing to boost growth or support British businesses and young people. And even that cannot be used as an excuse, as this proposal does not breach any of those red lines. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is having a real impact on young people growing up in this country today. Let me share with you Alex's story. A bright and ambitious 25-year-old from Taunton, Alex left university last year with the aim of working in a German fintech startup. He had planned to move to Germany for a few years, then return home with a better understanding of the German language and with the knowledge and skills to launch his own startup here in the UK, but the hurdles proved insurmountable. He told me, "I didn't want to move there forever. I just wanted a year, maybe 2, to earn invaluable experience, polish my language skills and get to know the German culture." But with no simple mobility arrangement in place between the UK and the EU, Alex ended up shelving his plans. Not only did Alex lose out, but our economy lost out too. The government's failure to act risks closing the world to a whole generation of Alexes across the UK. It is also holding back British growth and prosperity. Let's take the UK's £82.5 billion tourism sector as an example. It has been grappling with the impact of the failure of the last government to address youth mobility with the EU. ABTA, a trade body representing the sector, reported a 69% drop in UK nationals working in European tourism roles in the 5 years after the EU referendum. Businesses that once offered transformative opportunities to young Britons now face rising costs and critical staffing shortages. I've heard from one UK-based tourism company that what's employed over 400 young Britons a year. Mobility restrictions have forced them to drastically scale back their operations, undermining years of competitive advantage and slashing training and employment opportunities for young UK workers. European pubs, who run bars and restaurants in France, previously relied on UK staff for most seasonal roles. Today, only 50% of their workforce is British. A youth mobility scheme, which recent polling shows is backed by a clear majority of British voters, could ease labour shortages, provide essential career pathways, and help to safeguard our tourism sector's future vitality. Meanwhile, our small and medium-sized businesses are really struggling, especially in sectors where staff shortages have become acute. Sectors from hospitality to arts and entertainment to retail are desperately short of staff, and with the UK's ageing population, this is unlikely to improve in the future. A youth mobility scheme offers British businesses an excellent opportunity to address staffing shortages by welcoming young people from EU countries for a limited period, bringing fresh talent and energy to our workforce. With the threat of tariffs coming from the incoming President of the United States, it has never been more important for our government to break down barriers to opportunity elsewhere. When speaking with counterparts in Brussels in my capacity as the Liberal Democrats Europe spokesperson, I've been struck by a clear message. After years of attempts to cherry-pick, the UK now needs to show it is once again a trusted and reliable partner. By taking the lead on a youth mobility scheme, we have an opportunity to build that trust with our European allies to allow us to explore our other priorities. Without this, Britain's ability to strike new deals in defence, agriculture and trade will falter. If we send the signal that we are unwilling to move on a pragmatic, mutually beneficial scheme like this. A carefully defined youth mobility scheme would give the British people control. It would ensure participants could only come under a clearly defined category and tightly controlled time limit, while also signalling that we value cultural exchange, business growth and an ongoing partnership with our nearest neighbours. Let's be honest, we can't afford to keep letting down young people like Alex. Nor can we keep small businesses in limbo, forcing them to cope with staff shortages, when a scheme like this can do so much to help. Young people in this country are already facing unprecedented challenges: a housing crisis, low salary growth, a rising cost of living and high taxes on income. The very least the government could do is remove barriers preventing young people in the UK from living and working in the rest of Europe. And so it saddens me that the government have so far ruled it out. I call on the government to give the young people of this country a proper explanation. Many of them put their faith in the Labour Party to reverse the damage done by the previous government, but remain disappointed and frustrated. This bill calls for a solution that restores vital opportunities for our young people who've been left high and dry by the Conservatives' botched Brexit deal. By embracing a well-structured and controlled youth mobility scheme, we will send a powerful message that this country is serious about supporting our young people and backing British business with the labour force it needs to grow. This is a moment to bring opportunity and renewed goodwill back to the heart of UK-EU relations, a real reset. The issue will not go away, and as a Liberal Democrat, I am proud to have sponsors for this bill from the Green Party, SNP, Plaid Cymru and the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland. I know that there will be many on the Labour and Conservative benches who know that a youth mobility scheme with the EU is the right thing to do. It is time to rebuild our relationship with Europe and set our young people free. I commend this House to the bill.
The question is that the Honourable Member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Tom Gordon, Sian Berry, Caroline Voden, Stephen Gethens, Saoirse Eastwood, Sarah Olney, Liz Saville-Roberts, Joshua Reynolds, Richard Ford, Helen Maguire, Liz Jarvis and myself, Madam Deputy Speaker.
James McCleary. Nice and straight now.
Make a valid answer.
Youth Mobility Scheme EU Countries Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, 25th of July 2025.
Friday the 25th of July 2025.